The story begins in a remote area of Alaska, in the United States. U.S. Marshal Madeline Harris, Michelle Dockery, is tasked with an important mission. She must transport a federal witness named Winston, Topher Grace, from Alaska to Seattle, so he can testify against Moretti, the head of a criminal syndicate. Winston, an accountant who used to work for the Moretti Group, possesses a wealth of incriminating evidence. Of course, Moretti does not want Winston to appear in court alive. To complete this mission, Madeline charters a small plane. The pilot is Darrell Booth, Mark Wahlberg, a cocky Texan who flies locally in Alaska. Darrell appears outwardly talkative but seems secretive about his past. Before takeoff, Darrell informs Madeline that the plane's radio communication equipment is broken, but the flight is not long and it shouldn't be a problem. Madeline has no idea that she and Winston are about to embark on a deadly journey. The plane takes off and enters the desolate and magnificent Alaskan wilderness. Initially, everything seems to be going smoothly. However, as time passes, Madeline begins to notice some things that are not quite right. Firstly, Darrell's flight path seems somewhat deviated. He claims that he needs to detour to avoid a storm, but Madeline, as an experienced U.S. Marshal, is skeptical of Darrell's explanation. Secondly, Darrell exhibits some behaviors during the flight that are inconsistent with the identity of a pilot. For example, he is not very skilled in operating the plane, and even appears flustered at times. What makes Madeline even more uneasy is that she notices Darrell constantly observing her and Winston, with a strange look in his eyes. Winston also senses the unusual atmosphere. He was already extremely uneasy about testifying, and Darrell's strange behavior further intensifies his fear. He begins to suspect Darrell's identity and expresses his concerns to Madeline. Madeline and Winston's suspicions are eventually confirmed. Madeline accidentally discovers a shocking secret: Darrell Booth is not the real pilot at all. The real Darrell Booth has already been murdered, and that Darrell in front of them is actually a professional killer. The killer's target is self-evident: Winston. And Madeline, as the U.S. Marshal escorting the witness, naturally becomes an obstacle for the killer. Once his identity is exposed, the killer no longer pretends and reveals his ferocity. He attempts to kill Madeline and Winston. Madeline immediately takes action and engages in a desperate fight with the killer. Inside the cramped cabin, Madeline uses her extensive law enforcement experience and exceptional combat skills to engage in a fierce struggle with the killer. The plane is violently buffeted during the fight, and there is a constant danger of crashing. In the intense struggle, the plane ultimately crashes in the Alaskan wilderness.